Do you know what's the tagline for this game? Your revolver holds 6 bullets, but your fists never run out of ammo. Damn right. I seriously love it. It's what the game is all about, meeting and greeting Nazis and other enemies with your fists, primarily. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and start from the beginning. Indiana Jones. I love the movies, even the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Yeah, hate that scene with the fridge all you want, but I find it ridiculous as jumping from airplane with inflatable boat. The only thing I didn't like is Shia LaBeouf's character, quite annoying. Now, from all the movies, my favorite is The Last Crusade. The chemistry between the late Sir Sean Connery and Harrison Ford is unmatched. I've watched it at least 10-15 times over the years. In terms of games, until start writing about this video, I know the existence of a very few, but it turns out there are a lot more than I was initially thinking. There are 26 based on the character, on a lot of different platforms, from Atari 2600 to Facebook. From text-based games to point-and-click to action-adventure. There is something for everyone. I'm familiar with just a handful of them and mostly by reputation. There are a couple of point-and-click adventure games that are on my review list, but if you're not a fan of the genre, you have a couple of other choices. Several NES and SNES games if you like a bit more color and graphics, but if you're into counting polygons, you're in luck. There is a Tomb Raider knockoff called Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. People seem to have fond memories of the game, so it might be worth checking it out. I'm probably never gonna play it, it seems clunky, basically a product of its time. There is also Staff of Kings for Wii, PS2, PSP and Nintendo DS, but by the review scores it doesn't look to be worth your time, especially on the Wii because of the bad motion controls. So what's left is the LEGO games or today's subject, Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. For this review, I'm playing the PC version. The game requires a couple of tweaks to run in 1080p, 60 FPS and movie/loading screens to fit on the screen properly. They are linked in the description to PC Gaming Wiki with all needed for the game. Don't unlock the frame rate. It won't allow you to beat the first level, so limit it to 60. Also, I'm using mouse and keyboard. They are fine. The game is a console port and looks like a controller would be the better option, but it didn't detect my Xbox One controller. This might be an issue on my end. Since it plays well with mouse and keyboard, I didn't try my PS2 controller. On the technical side, I noticed an occasional dip in the frame rate and the climbing animation don't play properly, but beside that, it's pretty good port. Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb is released on 23rd of February 2003 to pretty good reviews. It's developed by The Collective, the studio behind the highly underrated Mark Echo's Getting Up, Contents Under Pressure. I did a video about the game couple of years ago. Emperor's Tomb has an entirely original story and it's not tied to the movies. I really appreciate this approach. It gives the developer more freedom to differentiate from the source material, especially in the environments. The story takes place in 1935 and starts with Indiana Jones hunting for the idol of Goro Watu, deep in the jungles of British Ceylon, present-day Sri Lanka. After fighting his way and getting it, he is ambushed by Albert von Beck, a Nazi working for you-know-who, with high interest in the idol. However, Indy manages to serve him as a dinner to a giant crocodile and beats up von Beck's henchmen. Back home, he starts studying the idol until he is interrupted by Marshal Kai T. Chang from the Chinese Republic and his assistant Mei Ling. They manage to convince him to find the 2 remaining pieces of the Mirror of Dreams. The first is in the idol, and cover the entrance to the Emperor Qin's tomb and retrieve, before it gets into the wrong hands, the heart of the dragon, flawless black pearl with the power to control the will of people. Of course, Nazis are trying to get it before you. The story won't blow your socks off, it's alright, it's an enjoyable ride. The couple of twists that the game has are obvious. Okay, let me ask you a serious question. Look at him, what do you see? Isn't it obvious? He's the main bad guy. His face gives it away. Even his skin doesn't have a normal color. How come Indy doesn't see all the signs? I guess we wouldn't have a game. Oh yeah, Mei Ling is the love interest. It's that obvious. The characters are kind of interesting, but they don't have enough time on the spotlight to be developed. The villain is one note. He's just one to rule over the world. The other one has a cartoonish laugh. Also, I don't buy the attraction between Mei Ling and Indy. Initially, she resents him and throughout the whole game, she appears a couple of times briefly, so I just don't buy it. They could be developed a bit more to establish their relationship. The story and characters are fine, but I just wish there were a bit more to everything. The short bit at the beginning of the video was there for a reason. The hand-to-hand combat is the front and center of the game and the marketing focused on that. This poster, the back of the DVD, previews mention it. It's actually pretty awesome. By the looks at the games released in 2003, there isn't one that had such a good hand-to-hand combat. It doesn't mean it's very deep. You have right from the start light, heavy attack and all the available combinations between them, plus grabbing enemies. What makes me like this part of the combat is, first, it feels good, punchy, meaty, thanks to the sound effects. They feel like genuinely pulled from the movies. Secondly, you get great feedback from enemies when you hit them. They bend and twist, getting dizzy, react to every punch or shot very expressively. And of course, the sounds they make. Thirdly, the frantic nature of the brawls. They are fast, adrenaline pumping, a bit chaotic and non-stop. Fourthly, the environment. Chairs, table legs, bottles, etc. are there to be used to your advantage. Throwing a bottle can lead to an enemy dropping down his weapon, or this. The table leg is probably the best. You just smack the socks out of everyone. Some rules you can tell were specifically designed with the brawl in mind. Enemies don't shoot you, there are plenty of stuff in the environment you can use. It's obvious what was the priority. I especially love grabbing enemies. It often ends with me checking if they can fly. All attempts are successful so far. I guess I should keep trying. Besides that, you can punch, kick or throw them in other enemies. It's a joy to beat the teeth out of them. The other part of the gameplay is the shooting. It's okay, serviceable at best. You have an auto aim and if an enemy is in your line of sight, you'll hit them. It's not super sticky, so if there were more enemies on screen, I just moved the mouse left and right to hit all of them. That way I didn't give them a chance to fight back. The weapons are what you expect in a game set around World War II. They don't have a recoil, so the only thing you need to worry about is the spread. By far the best is in this revolver. You don't get much ammo for it, but it takes down NPCs fast. They all sound fine, nothing out of the ordinary. By looking at how the shooting feels, it's obvious that the priority was the hand-to-hand combat. If the game was just the shooting, it would be highly unremarkable. A big part of what holds the game tight is the brawls, because uninspired is the shooting. I still had some fun. I often recreate the scene from Riders of the Lost Ark with Indy versus the Big Swordsman. The NPCs are bringing swords or come barehanded to a gunfight. What I usually do is shoot first the enemy with a weapon, holster mine, and then introduce them to Indy's fists. It was my decision to do that. You can't rely only on guns, you don't get enough ammo. Going with fists ahead might be doable, but you're going to take unnecessary damage. Easier to disarm the enemies by shooting them and then beat the helmets out of them. You can block attacks, but for more than half of the game, I almost never use that. When enemies start doing long attacks, then it becomes a necessity. You can also use Indy Sweep as a weapon. I think its purpose is mostly to stun enemies, because I don't think it does that much damage. I almost didn't use it. At the beginning of the game, it teaches you that you can pull a weapon from NPC's hands, but I did it once or twice. Looks cool, but my dumbass forgot you need to hold the left mouse button to do it, so I mostly didn't use it. It could be potentially very useful. The last part of the gameplay is platforming and puzzles. There isn't much to say about them. The platforming is fine. If you ever played some of the second reboot Tomb Raider games, Legend, Anniversary and Underworld, you know what you're getting into. Tomb Raider Legend is released 3 years after Emperor's Tomb, so the dev might be inspired by the latter. So is Naughty Dog with Uncharted. You jump, grab ledges, swing using Indy Sweep, hug walls to slowly move on narrow paths, and that's it. Nothing too complex, but it's fun. The last few levels you get to use a magical boomerang type weapon. Think of the one from the movie Crew, any of you watched it. It's remarkably similar, however it's underwhelming. With the left mouse button you throw it, with the right you punch nearby enemies. It feels less impactful than the other one or two-handed weapons. It's like hitting them with a newspaper. You are forced to use it because some enemies are vulnerable only to this thing. What loses points in the gameplay department for me are the puzzles. Playing as Indiana Jones, I was expecting some brain teasers, but they are extremely simple. There are two, one in the beginning and one by the end of the game, that resemble a proper puzzle, but they are also not very difficult. This was a letdown. The dev tried to spice up the gameplay with 3 turret sections. I know most people hate them, but I'm not one of them. I can enjoy one. However, I dislike them here. The first one is ridiculous as much as the fridge scene from the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Indy is in a rickshaw, shooting enemies, chasing a vehicle, and the guy pulling the rickshaw can keep up with the car. I wouldn't mind it if the shooting was good. The second and third are identical. Indy on top of a slow as fuck lift cabin shooting airplanes. I thought this scene would never end. The first time you're on top of one of them, it will take you 6 minutes of just this. It felt like 20. Thankfully, the last one is very short. Enemies are not the smartest, but they are fine. They shoot or attack, stop for a couple of seconds, giving you a chance to get to them. Even when they notice you, they don't start shooting immediately. However, by the end, some enemies can be relentless with their attacks, in quite a contrast than the ones in the beginning. They can put up a fight. Enemies are way faster than you, but I still didn't die a single time from an encounter with an NPC. When I did, it was usually a mix between my incompetence and my impatience. However, the bosses are bad. In the best case scenario, okay. They are visually interesting, but my god, they are so boring. This is the first one. You just throw at this experiment a couple of lab flasks with some green chemical, then hit him 4-5 times and that's it. They don't get any better. The last one looks cool, but I beat him in what felt like less than a minute. They were a huge disappointment. Two are mildly entertaining. The first is this chase sequence, and the second is a fight against two female assassins, but they went down too fast. I would suggest crank up the difficulty to the hardest. On medium, it's not very challenging. Speaking of difficulty, the game lacks in-mission checkpoints, so expect, if you die for some reason, to repeat a big chunk of the level. Health is restored with water from special fountains. You have a water flask with you that you can fill and drink at any time. You can also find health packs that restore the health bar immediately. They are usually hidden in a box you can break or sitting in the environment. When you reach China, there are 3 special flasks that give temporary boost to the damage you do, defense you have, and fill and extend the health bar. The one with the defense is pointless, it's on a timer and it's very short to be worthwhile. Levels are great, they are linear in nature, but they are offbeat paths that lead to some goodies. Weapons, ammo, health packs, etc. There are some artifacts, but I'm not sure what's the point of them. Probably they are just collectible. In the main menu there is a grey out artifacts option. Even after I finished the game, I couldn't access it, so I don't know what's going on there. You visit the jungles of Ceylon, fight on the rooftops in Istanbul, make your way around a huge castle in Prague, stir a big brawl in a restaurant in Hong Kong, infiltrate German submarine base, and others. The variety is big and fitting for a globe-spanning adventure. All offer a good mix of shooting, fighting, platforming, and traps. One of the most memorable things in Emperor's Tomb is the music. Of course you can hear familiar tunes, but the composer Clint Bayakian, I hope I pronounced the name right, did an excellent job. Just by listening to it, you might say John Williams did it. He successfully made the music sound familiar yet original. One of the worst things about the game, at least when it comes to the PC version, is the camera. I guess this is also a problem in the other versions. It goes merry-go-round and in tight spaces. On this boat I died way more times than I am willing to admit. You can't do a mistake. Indy can't grab if you jump diagonally and the camera wasn't very helpful. However, moments like this are rare and it doesn't ruin the game, and the other times I had an issue, they were not that severe, just minor inconveniences. I had blast with Emperor's Tomb, but there is one more thing to consider. The gameplay doesn't change much. If you don't like the whole loop of punching, shooting, platforming, I doubt you will finish the game. For what it offers, it's a bit long. It will take you between 10 to 11 hours to finish it. By the end, I started feeling fatigued, but thanks to some new environments and challenges, I pushed through. The one thing the game manages to do quite well is capture the spirit of the movies. Music keeps the action heart pumping, and despite the lackluster puzzle design, with some exceptions, and disappointing bosses, this is a must play for Indiana Jones fans or fans of Tomb Raider and Uncharted games. Even with all its faults, everything is wrapped in a nice package that missed the chance to be great instead of good. Music, fighting, level design, atmosphere and decent voice acting is what making this game worth playing. Honestly, punching Nazis never felt better.